Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, uncovered something startling about human nature. He found that you don't truly see someone's character in their words, their achievements, or even their actions when the spotlight is on them. Instead, Jung discovered that two subtle but powerful psychological patterns reveal who someone really is beneath the mask they wear. And almost everyone exposes these secrets without even realizing it. Picture yourself sitting across from someone you thought you knew well, maybe a friend, a colleague, or even your partner. They appear trustworthy, composed, and genuine. Yet something feels slightly off. That unease you sense is not your imagination. It's your intuition catching the slip of their mask. Jung spent decades studying what he called the persona, the social mask we all construct to fit expectations. But no matter how carefully someone maintains that image, two psychological tells will always break through. Once you know how to spot them, you'll never mistake the mask for the person again. These insights aren't complicated theories or abstract tests. They're simple, observable patterns that cut through appearances and expose authentic character. And the unsettling part is this: they don't just reveal others, they confront you with your own hidden truths. Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." These two windows into human nature show us the parts of ourselves we'd rather deny. The first reveal is what I call shadow mapping, noticing who someone judges most harshly. Jung explained that the traits we criticize in others are often the ones we've buried in ourselves. This process, called projection, happens unconsciously. When someone reacts with unusual intensity, whether in condemnation or admiration, they're revealing qualities they've disowned or secretly longed to develop. Take David, a respected architect who prides himself on integrity. He constantly lashes out at his colleague Marcus, labeling him manipulative for charming clients. Jung would say David's anger isn't about Marcus. It's about David's own rejection of his desire to be more socially skilled. His judgment is self-oppression, a refusal to embrace qualities that could serve him. This is why shadow mapping is so reliable. Every harsh judgment is a mirror. But projections can also be positive. When someone constantly praises others as talented or confident, they may be overlooking those same traits within themselves. The key is always emotional intensity. The stronger the reaction, the closer you are to their shadow. The second reveal is what I call mask maintenance. Watching how someone responds when their carefully crafted image is threatened. Jung observed that maintaining a persona requires enormous energy. The moment that mask slips, through criticism, mistakes, or pressure, their authentic character emerges. For example, Sarah, a marketing director, built her reputation on being unshakably calm. But when a client questioned her judgment in a high-stakes meeting, her voice grew sharp, her posture stiffened, and the cracks in her mask appeared. That flash of defenses revealed far more about her character than years of polished professionalism ever could. Jung's discoveries remind us that true character is not found in the performance we present, but in the unconscious patterns we cannot control. Pay attention to these two reveals, shadow mapping and mask maintenance, and you'll not only read others with clarity, but also uncover hidden dimensions of yourself. She interrupted the client, deflected blame onto her team, and even made subtle digs at the client's previous decisions. In that instant, Sarah's carefully constructed persona collapsed. The calm, professional image she had polished for years gave way to defensiveness, insecurity, and self-preservation. Jung would say this moment revealed Sarah's authentic character more clearly than years of smooth interactions ever could. Under pressure, when her image was threatened, her unconscious patterns rose to the surface. Jung once wrote, "The foundation of all mental illness is the unwillingness to experience legitimate suffering." Sarah's refusal to sit with the discomfort of criticism forced her into defensive reactions. And this is what makes persona breakdowns so powerful for character assessment. They don't just appear during dramatic crises, they emerge in small, everyday moments. When someone's phone dies and they can't check their notifications. When they're kept waiting longer than expected. When their joke falls flat and no one laughs. In these tiny cracks, the mask slips. A flash of irritation, a sharp change in tone, or a tightening of posture reveals far more than hours of controlled conversation. Jung understood that authentic character isn't what people display when they're prepared. It's what leaks out when they're unprepared, unguarded, and vulnerable. Those who have done the work of accepting themselves, the individuals Jung described as individuated, show alignment between their public persona and private reactions. Their mask and their true self no longer stand in opposition. Now that you understand Jung's two reveals, shadow mapping and mask maintenance, it's important to see why they work so reliably. Jung devoted his life to studying the architecture of the psyche, the way our mind organizes itself to protect the ego while navigating reality. He compared human interaction to chemistry, writing. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Projection works so effectively because the unconscious does not distinguish between self and other when it comes to rejected material. When David criticizes Marcus for being manipulative, his unconscious is wrestling with his own dissound relationship to charm and authenticity. Judgment intensity always reflects the depth of an internal conflict. This is why truly secure people rarely waste energy on harsh criticism. The genuinely confident don't ridicule insecurity. Those authentically successful don't feel threatened by ambition. Jung also observed that when someone repeatedly judges others, it signals loneliness, the inner isolation that comes from being cut off from rejected parts of the self. He wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself." The second reveal, persona breakdown, works because maintaining a false image consumes enormous psychological energy. Jung called this ego maintenance. Under stress, this system weakens and primitive defenses take over. Do they lash out, revealing aggression? Do they withdraw, exposing avoidance? Do they deflect, signaling dishonesty? Or do they integrate the criticism, showing maturity and self-awareness? Jung noted, "A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them." How someone responds to challenge tells you whether they have integrated their emotions or are still enslaved by them. Here's where it becomes even more revealing. When shadow projection and persona breakdown combine, a third dimension emerges, the integration test. This test shows whether a person can recognize and accept their own shadow once it's reflected back at them. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Imagine gently pointing out to David that perhaps his strong reaction to Marcus might reveal a hidden wish to be more socially skilled himself. If David reacts defensively, "Are you saying I'm fake like Marcus?" It shows resistance and lack of integration. But if David pauses, reflects, and admits, "Maybe I do envy how easily he connects with people," that moment reveals growth potential. This integration test is the ultimate measure of character because it doesn't just expose unconscious patterns. It shows whether someone is willing to confront them. And that is where true transformation begins. I'm authentic. I'm like him. I don't need to manipulate people to get ahead. This was David's defensive reply when asked about his judgment of Marcus. Jung would immediately recognize this as the voice of a rigid ego, clinging to an image and refusing to face the shadow. Such responses show limited growth potential because the individual cannot acknowledge their own complexity. But contrast this with a different response. "Actually, yes. Sometimes I do wish I was better with people. I admire Marcus's social skills, even though his approach bothers me. Maybe I'm jealous of something I haven't developed. This answer reflects a deeper level of integration. David is able to hold paradox, being irritated by Marcus while also recognizing his own relationship to the trait. Jung wrote, "The most intense conflicts, if overcome, leave behind a sense of security and calm that is not easily disturbed." People who can integrate feedback about their shadow become stronger through self-awareness, not weaker. This is the essence of what I call the integration test. It reveals 3 distinct character types Jung identified. The unconscious type has no awareness of projection and reacts with pure defensiveness, always surprised by others' reactions. The aware but defended type knows they project, but cannot connect emotionally to that knowledge. They might say, "Yes, I judge people," but they don't explore what that judgment means. The integrated type can acknowledge projections with curiosity, using them as teachers for their growth. Jung called these individuals conscious, not flawless, but awake. If you've learned to see your judgments as mirrors of yourself, right? My projections became my teachers. This capacity for integration predicts how someone will handle conflict, criticism, intimacy, and growth in all areas of life. People who cannot integrate their shadow will repeat the same patterns endlessly, blaming others for what lives within themselves. But those who can embrace projection consciously move toward what Jung called individuation, the state of being authentic, self-aware, and capable of genuine connection. Now, how do we apply these insights in real life? Jung warned us, "Where love reigns, there is no will to power. And where the will to power is paramount, love is lacking." Use this knowledge to deepen understanding, not to manipulate. In relationships, listen to how your partner speaks about others. If they're constantly irritated by selfish people, they may be struggling with their own right to self-advocacy. If they dislike needy people, they might be rejecting their own need for connection. Instead of confronting them, invite curiosity. It sounds like their neediness bothers you. Do you ever feel like you can't express your own needs? This builds intimacy rather than conflict. In the workplace, character reveals itself in how colleagues handle pressure. Do they lash out, deflect, or accept feedback with grace? Jung wrote, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another." There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. By understanding a colleague's psychological patterns, you can adapt your communication in ways that create collaboration instead of friction. For parenting, this framework is invaluable. When your teenager complains that friends are fake or attention-seeking, guide them to see what these judgments reveal about their own struggles with belonging and authenticity. Instead of deepening judgment, you'll cultivate self-awareness. But remember, character assessment is always a two-way mirror. Every irritation, every reaction you feel toward others, is also a lesson about you. Jung wrote, "Everyone you meet knows something you don't know but need to know." Each encounter is an opportunity for growth. Here's a practical tool. Keep a shadow journal. Whenever someone triggers irritation, write down exactly what bothers you. Then ask, where might this exist in me? What am I afraid of in this quality? Don't condemn yourself. Observe. Jung said, "The acceptance of oneself is the essence of the whole moral problem and the epitome of a whole outlook on life." True self-acceptance is not indulgence. It is the foundation of health. Finally, practice the integration test on yourself. When feedback triggers defensiveness, pause before reacting. Ask, what if there's some truth here? What can I learn about myself? Jung reminded us that growth doesn't come from eliminating the shadow, but from working with it consciously. If you're ready to turn your reactions into teachers, declare, "I choose conscious self-discovery." But before we move forward, we must face a crucial truth. Character assessment itself has a shadow. Jung warned, "The healthy man does not torture others. Generally, It is the tortured who turn into torturers. The ability to read character must never become a weapon. Used without compassion, it turns into psychological domination. Used with understanding, it becomes a path to authentic connection. I've seen people misuse Jung's insights, becoming what I call shadow hunters, individuals who use psychology not for growth, but to attack others' vulnerabilities. This is a distortion of Jung's work, a weaponization of wisdom. Jung himself warned of this danger. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. Sometimes people obsess over analyzing others precisely to avoid looking inward. Here are the warning signs that character assessment is being misused. You feel superior when you figure someone out. This superiority shows you're inflating your ego instead of cultivating understanding. You use observations to manipulate others, exploiting their shadow or persona cracks to control them. That is what Jung would call poisonous. You grow judgmental instead of compassionate. Genuine insight should soften you, not harden you. And if you constantly analyze others but never yourself, you're using psychology as armor against self-awareness. Jung cautioned, "The greatest danger is that one may get stuck in the unconscious and never come back to reality." The antidote is what Jung described as an ethical relationship to the unconscious. Using insight for love, growth, and connection, never for power or superiority. Behind every projection and persona defense lies pain, fear, or trauma. When you see someone's shadow pattern, you are not uncovering a flaw. You are witnessing their humanity. Jung understood that we are all wounded healers, all navigating life with defenses and masks. The purpose of character reading is not to expose, but to create safety for authenticity. This leads us to the most profound aspect of Jung's framework, what I call the mirror effect. The moment when you realize that everyone you analyze is reflecting parts of yourself back at you. Jung wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." The mirror effect unfolds in three ways. First, those who trigger your strongest negative reactions are showing you your shadow. If arrogant people enrage you, ask what confidence means to you. If needy people drain you, explore how you handle your own needs. Second, the traits you admire most in others are often your unlived potential. Jung called this positive projection, casting your hidden gifts onto others. When you put someone on a pedestal for being bold, creative, or wise, you may be denying those same qualities in yourself. Third, once you can spot these patterns in others, you begin to recognize them in your own behavior. Every persona slip you observe in another becomes a mirror for your own subtle defenses. This creates a powerful feedback loop. Every person becomes a teacher. Every interaction becomes a classroom. Every judgment becomes a doorway to self-discovery. I once worked with someone whose constant need for validation irritated me deeply. I judged them as insecure and attention-seeking. But Jung's lens forced me to ask why it triggered me so strongly. The uncomfortable truth was that I also sought validation, only in more subtle ways I disguised as different. My judgment was not about them. It was about me. Jung wrote, "We are not what happened to us. We are what we wish to become." The mirror effect reveals not only what we repress, but also what we can grow into. Every trait you recognize in others exists as potential within yourself. You may not develop every quality, but awareness opens new territories of possibility. This also explains why some people feel strangely familiar, even at first meeting. Jung called this the recognition of the archetypal, seeing universal patterns that resonate with your own psyche. As you sharpen your ability to read character, you become what Jung described as the conscious individual, someone who sees clearly without judgment, understands without manipulation, and connects authentically without losing themselves. Jung wrote, "Individuality is the opposite of being a member of a group, an institution, a race, or a nation. The ultimate purpose of character reading is not power, it is awakening. The conscious individual does not simply follow collective patterns. They think independently, feel authentically, and relate genuinely. This kind of awareness has unique qualities. You begin to see others' shadow projections not with superiority, but with compassion. Instead of reacting to someone's judgment, you recognize that it reflects their inner conflict, not a flaw in your worth. Their projections become signals of pain, not moral failure. You also learn to notice persona breakdowns without taking them personally. When someone lashes out or grows defensive under pressure, you understand these behaviors as protective strategies rather than authentic intentions. This prevents you from being pulled into unconscious drama. Jung reminded us that the pendulum of the mind oscillates between sense and nonsense, not between right and wrong. Consciousness allows you to accept paradox. People can be both generous and selfish, vulnerable and guarded, loving and fearful, often in the same moment. The key is what you do with these insights. Instead of using them to distance yourself, you use them to connect more deeply. Seeing someone's psychological defenses clearly should create empathy, not alienation. Most importantly, you apply this same compassionate lens inward. Jung observed, the first half of life is devoted to forming a healthy ego. The second half is going inward and letting go of it. You come to see your own shadow and persona defenses not as condemnations but as information. Clues about your inner life. This shift changes everything. Conflict becomes an opportunity for clarity. Difficult people transform into unexpected teachers. Even your strongest reactions become data about your unconscious patterns. But Jung also warned heightened awareness often comes with loneliness. He wrote, loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself. When you begin perceiving psychological dynamics others ignore, you may feel separate from them. This isolation, however, is temporary. It is part of the individuation process. You are leaving unconscious belonging and moving toward conscious connection. As this process deepens, your relationships begin to shift. Shared projections and collective personas lose their appeal, making space for more authentic bonds. Jung observed, the creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct acting from inner necessity. Conscious relationships feel alive, creative, and spontaneous. They replace rigid scripts with genuine play. The real aim of Jung's character assessment framework is not to become an expert in reading others. It is to become more fully yourself. Jung wrote, "Men's task is to become conscious of the contents that press upward from the unconscious. Each time you catch a shadow projection or persona defense in yourself, you create choice to react unconsciously or to respond with awareness. This is integration, not erasing patterns, but loosening their grip until your authentic character can emerge." Jung warned that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Seeing your patterns clearly is uncomfortable, but it is productive pain, the kind that leads to transformation. The journey unfolds in stages. First, seeing patterns in others while blind to your own. Second, recognizing your own patterns intellectually while still falling into them emotionally. Third, catching yourself in real time and creating space between trigger and response. Fourth, responding to others' unconsciousness with awareness, combining compassion with boundaries. Finally, embodying what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold paradox until something new and creative arises. This is the fire of human growth. As Jung wrote, the difference between a good life and a bad life is how well you walk through the fire. The fire is conflict, projection, persona collapse, but walked through consciously, it becomes fuel for growth. Consciousness is never complete. It is not a final destination, but an ongoing practice. Each moment of awareness matters. Every time you pause before reacting, every choice to observe rather than judge, Every decision to respond with clarity instead of defense moves you closer to authentic selfhood. This is where Jung's insights reveal their true power. As you embody consciousness, something subtle but profound begins to unfold. Your awareness influences not only your inner life, but also the environment around you. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. When you step out of unconscious patterns, when you refuse to feed someone's projection or escalate a defensive mask, you create a space for transformation. People may not be able to explain what feels different, but they sense it. They notice your grounded presence, your reduced reactivity, your calm authenticity. This is what I call consciousness contagion. Awareness spreads not through lectures or corrections, but through embodiment." Jung reminded us, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." People feel the difference when you model authenticity rather than preach it. Some will resist. For those dependent on unconscious drama, your refusal to play the old game may be unsettling. They might intensify their projections or push harder with persona defenses, hoping to pull you back into familiar dynamics. But others will be drawn toward you, as if reaching for light. Your presence shows them a new possibility for relating. Slowly, they begin loosening their own defenses, sensing safety in your authenticity. This ripple effect extends beyond individual encounters. It can shift families, reshape workplaces, and even influence communities. Jung believed that collective transformation begins with individuals choosing consciousness. He wrote, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you. When you know who you are, when you've faced your shadow and uncovered your authentic character, you stop being defined by external projections. Instead, you become an anchor for others searching for their own truth. Your courage to face the shadow gives others permission to face theirs. Your willingness to drop the mask creates space for others to risk authenticity." This is the deeper purpose of character assessment, not to control or judge, but to respond consciously. Jung's greatest legacy was not his theories, but his invitation to live awake. Every time you resist turning insight into a weapon, you strengthen consciousness. Every time you notice a projection without retaliation, or a mask without condemnation, you move closer to your authentic self. Jung warned, "To be normal is the ultimate aim of the unsuccessful. You are not here to be normal. You are here to be conscious, to see clearly, to understand deeply, and to connect authentically." This is the real work of character development. It begins with noticing shadow projections and persona breakdowns, but it doesn't end there. It continues in the mirror you hold to yourself, in the ripples you send through relationships, and in the culture you help shape. Jung called this becoming a culture creator, someone who demonstrates new possibilities for human connection. So, pay attention. Watch for the projections, notice the masks, and most importantly, turn the same clear gaze inward, because the ultimate character you are developing is not someone else's, it's your own.